see your passport, please?
Yes.
Thank you. Ji Chu Min, People's Republic of China. And just where are you headed, young woman?
I'm a student at Bethany Theological Seminary, a Church of Brethren school in Oak Brook, Illinois.
And just how did you find out about this Church of the Brethren?
Oh, you know Doris and Fry? They're pastors in Church of Brethren. They went to China as English teachers for 1 year, and they attend my church regularly. And we got to know pretty well. When I told them I wanted to study theology, they said, we know a very good one. That is Bethany Theological Seminary. So I come.
Well, how long has this Church of the Brethren been in the People's Republic?
Oh, I think Church of Brethren had been in China since 1908.
1908? And I thought Richard Nixon was the first American to go to China. Well, you sure play a nice tune on this, just what is that anyway?
This?
Yes.
This is a Chinese music instrument.
Called,
This is called erhu.
Erhu?
Yes.
Well, you know, it's not every day that I get a Brethren-connected Chinese erhuist here at my border station. Would you mind playing one more song for me?
I'd be glad to.
Well, come on through.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was just great. Brings back memories of my trombone lessons. Well, I never would have guessed that this Church of the Brethren group had been in Red China. Well, that's just a little nickname we used to give your country.
Then you would also be surprised to hear about some of the other places these brethren have been.
You don't mean...
Yes.
For the past few decades, Christians in the Soviet Union were separated by the Iron Curtain. But to the Brethren, the Iron Curtain was just another barrier to cross. It began in the 1950s and 60s with visits to and from the Russian Orthadox Church, exchanges that began at the very time tensions between the U.S. and the Soviet Union were at fever pitch. But with the coming of perestroika, much has changed. In the last 3 years, 1,000 churches have returned to active use, and more than 2,000 new churches have been established. There are now 3 times as many Christians in the Soviet Union as there are members of the Communist Party. The raising of this cross over Danilov Seminary, the new headquarters of the Russian Orthodox Church, symbolizes the new life that has been breathed into all the churches of the Soviet Union. And according to one church leader, it was those early contacts with such groups as the Brethren and involvement with the World Council of Churches that helped lay the groundwork for perestroika.
In the public discussion around perestroika, we are dealing with issues like healthcare, human integrity, racism, women's rights, all issues which have long been on the agenda of the World Council of Churches. In a real sense, our WCC exposure has prepared us to participate meaningfully now in our national debate.
One result of the new official acceptance of the Church in the Soviet Union was last year's World Council of Churches Central Committee meeting in Moscow, the first ever in the Soviet Union. At a reception in the Kremlin's St. George's Hall, the world church leaders were the invited guests of the Soviet government. Later, the leaders of world Christendom gathered in the Moscow Baptist Church. As the church in the Soviet Union branches out, its leaders have expressed their desire to learn more from the Brethren about working with the young, the aging, and the disabled, and in charting new paths of servant ministry. In turn, the Brethren stand to gain much from the liturgy, the spirituality, and undaunted faith of Soviet Christians. Our Russian Orthodox brothers and sisters talk repeatedly and warmly of the Brethren hospitality and trust during the difficult times of the Cold War, and how the Brethren crossed the borders of political systems and in the process set the stage for even deeper relationships in this new age of openness.
Passports, please. Thank you. Bob Chase, New Windsor, Maryland, and Lenore Paulsgrove, Modesto, California. You know, it looks like you've been traveling to some pretty interesting places. Peru, Kenya, the West Bank, India, Haiti. Just what were you doing in a place like Kenya?
Well, we're with the SERVE program of the Church of the Brethren. We import craft goods from the developing world.
Providing wealthy Americans with quality goods at great prices at the expense of poor third world citizens and your church people.
No, that's not the idea at all. We're trying to improve economic conditions there.
And you, ma'am, how did you get mixed up in all this?
A group of us in our church have been acquainted with SERVE for a long time. And we just decided we wanted to open our own shop. We're especially impressed with the idea of people helping themselves. And the served products give us a lot of pleasure.
Well, all this sounds a little bit suspicious to me, and I'm still not sure about you, buddy. But this lady seems to have an honest face, so I'm going to let you pass. Oh, by the way, you don't know where I could get a nice hand-woven tablecloth, do you? My wife's been wanting one, and you know how expensive those things run in the shops around here.
Young man, you just come right on out to Modesto. We'll find the perfect tablecloth for your wife.
For more than 40 years, Serve Handcrafts has made crossing borders our business, a business with a mission, to promote the economic well-being of our brothers and sisters in the developing world. This lofty goal was made real for me last December when I visited the basket makers of Haiti, people with few employment skills, limited raw materials, and no local market. In the slums of Cité Soleil, 200,000 people live in 2 square miles on mud flats, covering a garbage dump. In a nation with a per capita income of less than $1 per day, our basket orders do often mean the difference between life and death. Unhappily, this scenario is repeated in most of the 43 developing nations where served craft people struggle to survive. Whether in Asia, Latin America, or Africa, tens of thousands of artisans and their families depend on income from the $3.5 million in sales which Serve was able to achieve in 1989 through its partnership with 2,800 churches and community groups. This year, growing markets will allow us to provide almost $3 million in income to producer groups. One of these new markets is our recently opened store at 475 Riverside Drive in the Inner Church Center in New York City. This will allow us a special opportunity to market in a large city environment, as well as to have a presence among the interdenominational community, which has been so supportive of the Serve program. Recognition of Serve's unique purpose and operational abilities was evident last year when we were approached by Christian Children's Fund of Richmond, Virginia, concerning a joint marketing program. This exploration quickly moved to fruition. In the fall of this year, Serve will be providing all of the crafts and complete catalog fulfillment for a Christian Children's Fund catalog to be distributed to more than 370,000 of their sponsors and supporters. This is an exciting example of how organizations from different geographical locations and religious backgrounds have joined forces to demonstrate their solidarity with the people of the developing world. It is often difficult to find a direct, hands-on way to be in partnership with the nations of the Southern Hemisphere. Serve provides a unique opportunity for individuals to learn about other cultures and to directly assist hardworking craftspeople and their families by marketing their products. This program can only work when we have the assistance of literally tens of thousands of volunteers and thousands of congregations throughout the country. This congregational involvement can take many forms, including the sponsorship of alternate Christmas fairs, small displays in the church, or even the maintenance of a full-time store in a commercial location. Last year, when Evelyn Giddens, our longtime Oakdale, California store manager, retired, we searched for a new way of providing the people of Central California with an opportunity to participate in the Serve program. We didn't have to look far, as the Modesto Church of the Brethren Serve Committee indicated its excitement and enthusiasm for increasing their involvement. It's a long way from New Windsor, Maryland to Modesto, California, but we feel very close to Lenore Paulsgrove and the Modesto Church as we work together to assist people in the developing world.
Our Serve Committee at home has adopted a slogan: have Serve gifts, will travel. I suppose you wonder what that means. In addition to operating our shop, a lot of our energies are focused on displaying and selling gift items at special events in our community. We visit churches of other denominations and ecumenical gatherings such as the Church Women United monthly meetings and the Heifer Project annual dinner. A special bonus is the crossing of denominational borders that enrich our ties with each other, and at the same time, we join in support of the people all over the world who are involved with SERVE. We also feel that we have a strengthened sense of a relationship with people of other nations. For instance, a young couple related to our congregation is currently serving in Bangladesh. Part of their work involves training people for leadership roles in the cottage industries where the fine gift items are made. So when we look at an object from Bangladesh, we think of David and Sandy Franklin and the many people with whom they work. If you'd like to hear more of the SERVE story, stop by the shop and display over in the exhibit hall and let's chat. Elder John Klein might have said, "Have gospel, will travel." As an expression of the gospel, today we say, "Have SERVE gifts, will travel."
Passport, please. Thank you. Jennifer Casolo, you've got a visa stamp from El Salvador here. Just what were you doing down there, Miss Casolo?
Well, as a Brethren volunteer living in a Baptist church in Washington, I shared the third floor with 23 Salvadorans. After hearing their stories, I felt called to share in their risks and their life and their struggle for peace.
Another Church of the Brethren connection to a questionable part of the world. El Salvador, that's a pretty dangerous place. Don't you think you're a little, well, undersized to go to a place like that?
The people who are really small are those without courage for their convictions.
Okay, we may just have more questions for you later, Miss Casolo.
Okay, I became a Brethren volunteer after participating in Methodist, UCC, Evangelical Covenant, baptized and confirmed Catholic, Jewish University, but I wanted to go to Latin America. And I didn't want to go anyplace dangerous. You know, call to the border is that border with the marginalized, with the poor, with those who are close to death every day because of poverty or because of repression. Those who, if they wake up the next morning with life, it's a miracle of God. I was called to El Salvador, called to share in the same fate as those who are on the border of life and death. And there on that border is Christ crucified. And there on that border is Christ resurrected. What is that fate? The fate of the poor, the fate of the marginalized. Picture a railroad track going on. It's called Neighborhood Without End. Dirt banks on one side and the other, and there's the sewage river runs on by. Cardboard, plastic, tin shacks, 10 feet by 10 feet, family members crowded in. The border. That fate, living in the countryside, farming subsistence crops, picking coffee once a year, and then the war, the military operation comes in. US guns and US bullets, and your home is burned to the ground. Your little farm animals killed. You flee with your children, seeking life. The fate of those on the border. The fate of those on the border who hear the call of God, who hear that God says to them, you have my love, as much as those who live in the strong houses behind the thick walls. In fact, you are the least of these. You are the small, the humble. You are my children. Set my people free. You learn that you have dignity. You learn that you are worthy. And you work, not just for the life of your family, but for the life of your people. You join a human rights group to speak out for human rights. You join a labor union to try to get a higher wage. You join a peasant organization to ask that the workday be 8 hours and that the pay be enough to feed your children. You join a slum dwellers group to get water into the neighborhood. You join a women's group to form a women's cooperative. And the fate of the poor, dragged out of your home by the Treasury Police, taken off the street by the National Police, shot in the middle of the night by a death squad. I thank God that for being there as a silent bridge, showing North Americans the different voices in El Salvador, a little bit of that fate I shared with them. 10:45 at night, your home invaded by uniformed men, heavy machine guns, National Police Panther Battalion. According to them, there's weapons buried in your backyard, but they don't let you out there to see them. Taken into the headquarters, put in a working booth, the fate of the poor. The hallway is lined with those with whom you'll share that fate. Tattered clothing, blindfolded, frightened, cuddled up, waiting to go into a working booth. Carpeting on the walls, 6 foot by 6 foot square. 8 booths in a row. Screams, cries, moans, vomiting, choking. What are they doing to the people on this side, to the people on that? You're guilty. You hid weapons. I'm innocent. I don't know where they came from. You're a subversive. I'm a Christian. Why won't you give us a name? Why won't you cooperate with us? Why won't you collaborate with us? Why do you want to suffer? Christ on the cross, over the young lieutenant's shoulder, a young lieutenant trained with U.S. tax dollars. Why do you want to suffer? Who wants to suffer? Christ said, take up the cross and follow me. Suffering is not the worst thing you can do. Being cruel is a lot worse, I say. And the fate of all those comes before me. And then the recognition. Those people know the fate of being close to death, and yet they claim life. And they know that if they die by standing up and claiming their life, Others will live on, and others will continue to say we want a roof over our heads, we want food in our stomachs. We want a society that is just. And a young man comes up after you tell this story for the 30th time and says, my dad was a victim in the Holocaust. And if he heard your story, he'd say, suffering is not the worst thing you can do. Being cruel is a lot worse. But being silent before the cruelty is even worse. As a nation, we are bringing death to the least of our brothers. We are making life impossible. Through war and through economic exploitation. As people of faith, we are called to that border. You don't have to go to El Salvador, but you have to take the same risks. You have to be the persecuted church in order to be the resurrected church.
Hi. What's your name, fella?
Joel Risser.
Joel Risser. How far you come on that tractor, Joel?
My farm in St. Charles, Minnesota.
And you've got a passport, too. Let me see that thing a second. Joel Risser, destination future. Now that's a border for you. What are you hoping to find when you get to the border, Joel?
Well, I'm hoping to find a world with clean air, good soil, pure water, and stuff like that.
That's a mighty good list. And what's it going to take for the future to be like that?
Well, you grown-ups have to start taking care of the earth so it can stay healthy for us kids.
Oh, yes. Well, that's a great response there, Joel. Why don't you come on through the gate, son, and good luck on your trip.
The water we drink, the air we breathe, the very future of planet Earth are drawing unprecedented attention at the threshold to the 90s. Having a cherished relationship with the environment, brethren have joined the movement to examine our lifestyles in order to live as better stewards of the Earth's resources. On the congregational level, we turn to South English, Iowa, Earth Day 1990. The English River congregation sponsored a community-wide forum on caring for the environment, with workshops ranging from handling and disposing of household chemicals to the importance of the earthworm to agriculture. The guest speaker was one of the congregation's own, journalist Noel Grove, the senior editor for environment at National Geographic magazine, whose Brethren Farm values helped form his concern for the environment.
To me, how we relate to the environment is how we feel about the world, and I guess my theology is how we feel about the world is somewhat how we feel about ourselves. I guess I worship through the environment. I find such peace in a natural environment, in an organized, balanced environment, that I hate to see it go away. We need it to survive. And to me, there's ample evidence that enough of it is going away that survival is getting to be just a little bit in question. And that's why I like to do what I can to talk about those issues and write about them.
On a regional level, a conference on faith, farming, and the future was called in Heston, Kansas, by the 5 Plains districts. The 100 participants examined the future of rural churches, rural communities, and agriculture itself.
The farmer and the farm cannot be regarded as a satellite out there in orbit around the larger culture in need of a fix. Rather, it is an integral part of the larger culture. And that what the farm crisis, I think the way we ought to look at it is that what is happening to the farmer and the farm is simply a faint foreshadow of what's to happen to the culture at large.
On the denominational level, the General Board has presented a major paper for annual conference consideration, Creation Called to Care. In addition, the Vision for the Rural Church Committee began work in January and is holding an insight session here prior to its September meeting. On the global arena in Seoul, South Korea, brethren were among those examining how the care of creation is interwoven with the causes of peace and justice.
The church is so far, when we talk about justice, we have concentrated on economic justice, not on ecological justice. And we also have forgotten that human beings are just one of 10 million species that exist in our world.
At all points, local, regional, national, and global, if the church's witness is to be credible and indeed take us closer to a future of care for the planet Earth, we must speak with new insights and a new fervor, reject the powers of destruction, and covenant for peace, justice, and the care of creation.
Passport, please. Thank you. Oh, now this is a different one. You brethren don't do much normal traveling, do you? Joyce McFadden on a journey toward health and wholeness. Excuse me, ma'am, if I'm a little slow, but just where are you going?
I'm not surprised that you're confused. I'm not quite sure myself where I'm going. It's kind of, I guess, like that song. All I know is that where God leads me, I will follow.
Well, that sounds like a pretty risky journey, and you're traveling alone.
I know it looks like I am. I suppose you don't check passports on those that are traveling with me in spirit only, do you?
Not at this border station. Well, come on through, Ms. McFadden. I wouldn't want to hold up your journey.
It's terribly scary, walking past that checkpoint, asking for entry onto this platform, into this fellowship. I had no question you'd accept me when I knelt with my husband on a similar annual conference platform 30 years ago to be consecrated as missionaries to Indonesia. But would you accept me now? Would you grant me clearance if you really knew who I am? In many circles, I introduce myself as Joyce, recovering alcoholic, drug addict, and compulsive overeater. Is it safe, I wonder, to do that here? I never intended to become an alcoholic. In fact, I grew up in a good, hardworking, and of course teetotaling brethren farm family. Serious about my moral values, I even boycotted my first party as a teacher because of the cocktail hour. Yet my life was a catch-22. The harder I tried to win God's love and acceptance by being good, by doing good things, the more I fell short. The discrepancy between what I wanted to be, to do, and what I perceived myself as being was intolerable. Illness and depression dominated my life. The pain, loneliness, isolation, and shame were overwhelming. For my family's sake, I would not have committed suicide, but I would have welcomed oblivion, even death. The medicines that well-meaning physicians prescribed during these times backfired as I became hooked on prescription drugs. In a desperate attempt to cut my pill consumption, I substituted the sedative drug alcohol as a medicator. My guilt and shame escalated as I hid my drinking from my children and friends. No one knew. I was even on church board and the spiritual life committee. See the discrepancy? Looking good on the outside, feeling terrible on the inside. Finally, an astute physician diagnosed my chemical dependency and gave me hope that things could change. I gladly went to treatment, but I was blown out of the water when my counselors recommended 6 months in a halfway house for women. Can you imagine my shock and shame? A nice 50-year-old brethren lady like me, 4 kids, a missionary yet to boot, in a halfway house for drunks. I'll never forget the bus trip to check out the place. Stranded in the Minneapolis-St. Paul bus terminal, I remember sitting on the stool in the stinking, dirty, godforsaken John. I had my winter boots on. I stomped 6 cockroaches dead and agonized, I'm on my way to a halfway house. For years, I had prayed for release from depression and illness. It was as if God was saying, okay, Joyce, here it is. Do you want it? Somehow I knew this was God's answer to my prayer. I knew then that I would go and I'd stay as long as was needed. It's been kind of like that for me ever since. A sense of letting go, of surrender. I wish that I could tell you the last 10 years have been without problems. They've not. There have been ups and downs, but the despair and depression have been replaced by a quiet sense of joy, purpose, and hope. My weakness has become my strength in that I know I am vulnerable and cannot go it alone. Each day I pray for God's help, for a sense of God's will for my life, and the power to carry that out. Like many recovering persons, I'm not afraid to talk about God doing for me what I could not do for myself. I thought God's call to me was to carry this message to alcoholics, addicts, and compulsive overeaters. I never bargained for this platform, for being called back to share the good news of God's grace with the church, for heaven's sakes. You know, Jennifer referred to being silent. The silence within the church has been the hardest, most painful thing for me. Often people have shushed me, are embarrassed, or look at me as if I'm speaking a foreign language. Mostly, they're just silent. The message seems to be, don't talk, don't trust, don't feel. You can understand then why our Brethren Health and Welfare support groups at annual conference have become so important to me as well as many others. In sharing our stories and reaching out to each other, we recognize the commonality of our journeys. Healing and wholeness come as we risk being vulnerable and break through the barriers of silence, prejudice, and fear. I couldn't believe what was happening in the Church of the Brethren when I heard the national women's themes a couple of years ago. It was as if their themes were my personal life themes of the last 10 years. Storytelling and bridge building, needs and support, and this year, wounds and healing. I didn't trust this group much as I ventured to Estes Park last summer for the National Women's event, but I went in response to a call to work on this year's event planning committee. I wasn't prepared for what happened to me at Estes Park. I felt an openness, an acceptance, and a connectedness on a soul level that I had not experienced outside of a few close friends and the AA fellowship. Much healing began for me, and I sensed God's call back to further involvement with the church. Now this is scary for me. Yet, I trust the gentle nudgings of the Spirit. In response to this, I sought out a spiritual director. This is still so precious, so fragile and new to me that I hesitate to even mention it here. Yet here again, I found acceptance and a place within the faith community to share the joy of God's movement in my life, as well as my doubts, questions, and fears. Sister Anna Mao used to assure me that the dark hours of the soul, even the depressions, were a trusted gift from God. I understand that now. Several years ago, I came to a sense of gratitude for God's trusting me enough to allow me to become an alcoholic and a drug addict. I'm now moving to a spot of being grateful that God trusted me enough to allow me to become a part of the community of faith called the Church of the Brethren. Thank you for being part of my journey today.
Passport, please. Thank you. Robert Allen, First Church of the Brethren, Chicago, Illinois. Well, today I've seen brethren in communist countries and in poor countries. I've seen them in war zones. I've seen them on tractors and on journeys toward health. And now you're going to tell me that these brethren are in the city?
Well, sir, the Church of the Brethren has had an urban ministry for over 100 years. And I have here a button in celebration of that.
Well, who would have thought? And traveling with you is Regina Newman. Are you also from this First Church of the Brethren, Ms. Newman?
Yes, I am.
And who are all these people with you?
The New Horizon Youth Choir, First Church of the Brethren.
New Horizon Youth Choir. Well, all you young people got your passports?
No!
Well, we're going to have a little problem here. You're going to have to give me your names one at a time, loudly and clearly, as we pass through this checkpoint, and I'm going to write them down. So pass on through. And welcome to the border. Tisha, is that with an S or a yes? Yes? Yes. Excuse me? And wait, Sherry, is that with a Y or okay, yes, excuse me? Oh, just one yes, excuse me. Robert, yes, last name in the middle. Yes. I'm sorry. Yes. Okay, just one second. Okay, just
In St. Louis and Baltimore, Brooklyn and Los Angeles, Seattle and Indianapolis, and at least a dozen other places, brethren have been crossing the border into city mission for 100 years. That crossing brings brethren into new places and into meaningful contacts with those outside the Germanic tradition. There was a Chinese church in Chicago and an Italian-speaking congregation in Brooklyn. New faces bring new life to the church. Yet, like Jonah with his call to Nineveh, brethren have struggled with the call to large metropolitan centers. In the constantly changing city, projects and churches appear and blossom, then often fade away. City work demands courage and determination. As in Jesus' parable of the sower, seed must be scattered, but the harvest is always uncertain. In Chicago, it began on Hastings Street in 1890. As that start represents urban beginnings in many places, so our story of ministry in Chicago parallels many other stories in urban ministry. In the 1960s, following Dr. Martin Luther King's death, flames had wiped out major sections of Madison Street 3 blocks away from Chicago First Church of the Brethren, and rock-throwing gangs roamed the streets, frustrated and bitter over their impoverished plight. Yet, because over 100 children played on the street only 1 block away, we knew our mandate was clear. The church reached out to serve young people in that troubled community. Some were baptized into the body. Time passed, numbers dwindled, the building fell into disrepair. There were only a faithful 25 to work at repairing that white elephant capable of seating 100, rather 600. The turnaround began in 1985 as we joined the first group in the denomination's Education for Urban Ministry program. We focused on 2 goals. The first was to rehabilitate our crumbling church building. One member, Mary, said, "You talk and you talk and you talk, but you never do anything. Don't tell me you're going to renovate the church and don't do it. I can't take it anymore." Good partners, including the Brethren Health Foundation, helped us to translate this talk into action. We have a renovated building and a human development center. And Mary was there on dedication day as balloons soared, choirs sang, and pipes tooted. Mary's comment, "I still don't believe it." As the rejoicing died away, we began to see results from the seed that had been scattered through the years. We reached our second EFUM goal as we strengthened and enlarged our ministry to youth. We have 60 children in after-school tutoring, a New Horizon club and choir, a community garden, and special trips. First Church is a place of ministry and hope for the people of East Garfield Park, where Christ is loved and served. You have helped Mary's dream come true. You have helped give our youth a new horizon. Thank you. Listen now as those youth praise God.
Have you been tried in the fire? Yeah.
Yes.
Have you been tried in the fire?
Oh, yeah.
Have you been tried in the fire? Yeah. Did you come through?
Did you come through? As dear Lord.
I know I got religion. I belong to the noisy crew. We shout when we get happy. That's the way we Christians do. Have you been tried in the fire? Yeah.
Yes.
Have you been tried in the fire?
Oh, yeah.
Have you been tried in the fire? Yeah. Did you come through?
Did you come through?
Did you come through now?
Did you come through?
Did you come through now?
Did you come through?
Did you come through?
Did you come through?
What a day. These brethren could drive a border guard crazy. If I hear of one more brethren crossing one more border. Uh-oh.
Crossing borders is not just a recent response of the Brethren. It's been in the Brethren bloodstream for nearly 300 years. Brethren have long sensed the parallel between opening one's heart to God and opening one's home to a stranger, between reconciliation with God and reconciliation with neighbor. One of the distinctive border crossings today is Vida Abundante, an effort of the Brethren and Disciples of Christ in the USA to assist partner churches in Cuba and Nicaragua in the training of pastors. In January, the Mission Christiani in Nicaragua graduated its first class in the 3-year training program in Managua. In the 3 years that I studied in the center, this graduate says, I feel like I've been formed as a pastor and now have the basic tools for the Christian work. And it's been such an important help in our own development and the development of our church. Work camps unite persons from across cultures in common labor and common worship. Among several Church of the Brethren work camps recently was one in Nicaragua that brought mostly college-age youth from the Brethren and Disciples in the U.S. and from the Pentecostal Church in Cuba, all together with youth from our partner church in Nicaragua.
What struck me the most was the sense of unity that I found even among people of 3 different nations, 3 different races, male and female, many different things that could have separated us and did separate us into being individuals, but how we were bound together.
It's one thing to try to get to know one another by writing to one another, he says, but you can't feel the closeness until you've had a sharing experience like we've had in the work camp. The work camp brought us together as brothers and sisters. Work campers also penetrate boundaries close home, entering into the heart of our cities, as in this summer's youth work camp in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, where youth, mostly from rural areas, helped renovate a building for use as a Brethren-operated shelter for the city's homeless. For some Brethren, the foray into new arenas may mean visiting other congregations in their own district, as in the pilot Youth to Youth program in Shenandoah. 2 by 2, they share the excitement of local, district, and national youth activities with their fellow youth. The call to the border may also mean trekking thousands of miles to a culture vastly different from one's own, as in the case of Nigerian pastor David Malafa, who is serving the Mount Wilson congregation in the Atlantic Northeast District as associate pastor for 4 months. The call to the border may be to scenes of disaster, as in St. Croix and other points along the swath cut by Hurricane Hugo last fall in the Caribbean and eastern U.S. So far, Brethren Disaster Service has recruited more than 600 volunteers for cleanup and reconstruction. In St. Croix, almost 80% of the roofs were damaged or destroyed, including the one on the home owned by Wilmot Harris. His temporary roof leaked off and on for months before Brethren volunteers replaced it in April.
And I really appreciate what they did because I slept for the first night since the 28th of December. I really slept comfortable, not really worrying about if it rains, if we're going to get wet.
The call to the border may mean planting the church on new soil, as in the Dominican Republic, where Brethren from Puerto Rico and the States are helping form congregations in the small, isolated communities. Santos Mota has been called to be pastor of the new church in the village of Las Torres. As in other places where the work has begun, the response has been enthusiastic, especially among the young of the villages.
People like to praise the Lord in a joyful way, and
That is good. In every place we preach the gospel in this area, the people respond to the gospel and accept Jesus, and people enjoy our visit and share with us.
We also cross borders when we share with new members at home in our own churches what our faith means. A new video curriculum on church membership is in the offing to share with new members or those experiencing renewal the brethren doctrines, and to share the stories of brethren who have traveled to the borders in the past, such as Ted Studebaker or more recently Enton Eller, and to share the beliefs and practices that guide the brethren today. In answering God's call to new vistas, to border areas crying out for shalom, afar or close at hand, the challenge is every bit as spiritual as it is geographic or cultural. For the call is God's call. The leading is God's leading. We who respond proceed with the assurance that as we go, God goes with us. God sees us through trial and triumph. God bestows grace and glory upon us as we journey.
And the Lord God said, "Come to the edge." They said, "But we might fall." And the Lord God said, "Come to the edge." They said, "But it's too dangerous." And the Lord God said, "Come to the edge." They came, and the Lord God pushed them, and they flew